Welcome into the Gig'em 24/7 Sports Podcast. I am Andrew Hattersley, joined as always on a Monday by Brian Perroni. Brian, near miss for Texas A&M this weekend. Go on the road to Alabama and lose 24-20. We did talk though on last week's episode about how A&M was kind of in the same spot as last year and ended up nearly pulling it off again. First off, thanks again for being here. What was your thoughts on the final play? I guess that's kind of the spot everybody's been talking about the last couple of days. What did you think of that play and just the game overall?
I thought it was interesting to see the two completely different perspectives of former A&M quarterbacks. Johnny Manziel was not happy with it. Just Kellen Mond, who obviously played under Jimbo Fisher, defended it and said, "Hey, it could have worked." All right. First of all, I run the ball. It's 3 seconds left. There's not time for another play, so you don't need to pass it. It does not matter. If you can't get 2 yards, then you don't on rushing the ball, then you don't belong in the game in the first place. You don't, sort of deserve the win. So I run the ball. But if you go with a passing play, it wasn't a fade route, but it was to, the front corner. It's such a low percentage deal. And it has to be, even Kellen Mond said, the timing has to be exact. And, if it's not exact, then, what happens is either it's just not even close to being made, which is what ended up happening. Or if Evan Stewart catches that ball, he ends up tackled at the 1 yard line. Because he was coming, back to the QB. So, it's just so, specific right there at the corner. And even if it goes perfectly, you're still not sure he gets in. So, wasn't a big fan. I thought maybe some kind of, get Haynes King to roll out, sort of like the play that he threw a touchdown to Donovan Green. He's better outside the pocket. It's what he did in high school. It's just his thing. He's not a guy that's just a pure pocket passer who's going to sit back there, look out. You need to get him out, let him read the field, things like that. And that's where he shines. So, that wasn't all that cost A&M the game, but yeah, I wasn't a fan at all. I like the run, but if not, I like the not throwing to a guy at the 1 yard line.
I saw your tweet right before that play too, saying run the ball and kind of knew which way. And I'm with you. Just give it, you give them, and you don't have to go right up the middle. I saw some people saying, well, they had a stacked front, going right up the middle. You can
go that way. Go that way.
You put the ball in the hands of, and I get it. Evan Stewart's had a tremendous night, finished with 8 catches for 106 yards. Huge night for him, and they targeted him 18 times. So he was clearly an emphasis. But Devon Achane's obviously your guy, and one of your best players, especially on offense. And so for me, I'm the same way. You trust him, put the ball in your best player's hands to go get 2 yards and find a way, whether getting him outside a crease or whatever you needed to do. The other thing I kind of thought about with that play is if you're going to go to a passing play, I'm with you. I actually wrote down that it was a low percentage play as well, just to be able to time it up perfectly for a pylon route on something you ran earlier. I get it worked earlier, and I think that was Kellen Mond's point, was they ran something that Haynes King would have been comfortable in practice, and that makes sense. But they already had a touchdown on that exact play, and you could tell Alabama was kind of ready for that play to come back and what they were going to do on adjustments wise. I would have loved to have seen, and just some sort of bunch set or something where it would have been harder to kind of match up on a receiver and make Alabama have to kind of read where guys are going and try to use some sort of rub route or something like that to kind of open something up. I think along the goal line, especially needing one play to get something, that would have been the play. But I do get going to your best receiver. I think it was kind of a low percentage play, but it was one of those things that for A&M, look, they came in, we talked about this last week at length, came in, I think it was 24-point underdogs, right?
Yeah.
And there was kind of a feeling there that will Bryce Young play or will he not play? But, regardless of whether he's in there or not, they've still got guys like Will Anderson, Dallas Turner, Jahmyr Gibbs, who obviously had a huge night. They've got a lot of talented players. So, for A&M, there's still a lot to build off going forward if they can use this in the right way. What do you think A&M can kind of take away from this game as they kind of look ahead to the next 6 games of the year? Sitting at 3-3 right now, going to have South Carolina coming out of the break. What do you think they can kind of build off this game?
Okay, so I hate moral victories. I mean, it's just
I do
like,
too.
what does the scoreboard show? But I will tell you, I think A&M saw that, hey, we can compete with, the number one team in the country. And yeah, Bryce Young wasn't there, and it's a different game if Bryce Young plays, likely. Um, well, I mean, Bryce Young doesn't run as well as Jalen Milroe, and they ran all over A&M,
Mm-hmm.
uh, just playing in Tuscaloosa after getting a win last year, coming within 2 yards of a win this year, I think it gives them a lot of confidence going forward. And I think you saw that sentiment with fans, but also with the players, the ones who have sort of gotten out on social media and said, hey, yeah, it wasn't, the ending wasn't ideal, but we did well, we kept up. So it's probably a big deal going forward just to give the team after that Mississippi State win where loss, sorry, where everything went wrong, just to give the team some confidence going forward, especially with South Carolina beating Kentucky this past weekend. Now, Kentucky was also without its QB, but South Carolina beat a ranked team, a team that was number 13, so that gives them some confidence. But then we get back to what we talked about last week with the quarterback situation. Fans want to see Connor Wickman.
We do.
And we thought Connor was going to see time against Alabama. If the game was close, we said he's not, and it was close, so he didn't see time. And then, I thought there was a chance that he might even start versus South Carolina, but now you can't just throw him out there. He's never seen a snap, and you throw him out there, on the road as a starter for his first snap. I don't see that happening. So now to see Wigman, it would probably take a blowout loss to Ole Miss. For A&M to play him or at least play him much at all. So that's it's sad. It's weird to say that a close game, there's a disappointment coming out of it, but the one disappointment is that you probably won't see your 5-star true freshman anytime soon. But it does look good. I mean, the Ole Miss is a good team. LSU, depending on when you get them, can be a really good team. So the schedule still is, a little tough going forward, but some of those games look a lot more. Those 2 games look more winnable now than they did. So there's some hope there.
And we also knew coming into the year, when we talked at length about this in the offseason, that A&M was going to have a backloaded home schedule with Ole Miss, with Florida, with LSU, UMass in there, and then just the trip to Auburn.
I always forget about UMass. That's such a weird
UMass, and that's
weird game.
that's
I always forget they're even FBS. Like they're barely FBS. So yeah, that's gonna be a fun little warm up for. Maybe we'll see Wigman in.
I was gonna say that's probably the opportunity for fans to see Wigman and be able to build off that. And credit to Haynes King. He hung tough, made obviously the one critical mistake before the half that led to 3 points for Alabama that proved to be costly. But otherwise, A&M had some plays in the passing game. You look at Evan Stewart, as I mentioned, 8 catches for 106 yards. Moose Muhammad continues to kind of come along the last couple of weeks, 6 catches for 64 yards.
I had forgotten about Moose's when he was wide open and walks into the end zone.
Yep,
sorry,
he
walks talking about Haynes. Yeah, I just because I think A&M had to settle for a field goal on that drive. Yeah, I mean Moose made an incredible catch, but he lost all his momentum, ended up going down. But that was like walks in the end zone if it's even just a throw in his vicinity. So sorry.
Just a missed opportunity right there. And penalties came at kind of a brutal time. And it was a weird situation there because you kind of had a situation on 4th and long-ish where a field goal puts you back within 4, but it kind of felt like A&M had their chance to be able to, and you didn't know how many more opportunities you were going to get, frankly, if you choose to settle for a field goal. And obviously the false start penalties kind of took the decision out of Fisher's hands there. But I do think, and I think on the defensive side, I think there were some encouraging signs as well. More pressure, a little bit more pressure was brought this week. And look, it led to some turnovers, and it led to this defense creating some opportunities. A&M had 17 points off turnovers this week. And And you can say, well, that's, playing against a backup quarterback, but A&M also forced a couple of those. Walter Nolan had a big play, kind of punching a ball out, and A&M
Fidel Diggs, man, had
Fidel
himself
Diggs
a
had,
game, 2 strip sacks. I mean,
yep,
so we're recording this right before the SEC Players of the Week come out, and if A&M would have won the game, he's no
question.
brainer defensive player of the week, at least defensive lineman of the week. So it's going to be interesting to see if he's still, possibly in the running for those, because he had
No doubt,
himself a contest for sure.
Huge week. And so that's why you can look at the 4 turnovers and say, well, Jalen Milroe, you probably don't have 4 fumbles in that situation, but A&M forced some of those and were able to generate some pressure on the A&M side. I think there's some hope that they start to get some guys back after the bye too. So you have some things to build off of on that side too. But I think you have to keep in mind what worked on this game and take it going forward for it to be a positive. And it's not going to be the season that A&M was looking for, but it's a chance to find some momentum at the end of the year. And I do think there are some positives to kind of take away this game, most notably the emergence of Evan Stewart. We have to talk about that. I think him going up and making some big plays, especially you texted me after this one as well. He finally got an opportunity to kind of show everybody his athleticism and his ability to adjust in the air. What do you think about his performance?
Yeah, I thought he had a really good game for sure. That play before Donovan Green's touchdown where, Stewart was down the right sideline and went up over the guys. And then the other play where he outjumped 2 people. I mean, the Alabama defense celebrated because they're like, we had an interception. It was a name familiar to A&M recruiting fans. Terry and Arnold was celebrating. And then, Evan Stewart's down there like, why are you celebrating? I got the ball. So, I mean, just, seeing him build up his confidence, getting a little bit of a groove with Haynes King, I think is a really good thing. And that's one of the big silver linings to come out of this week is, and I guess 2 weeks ago when he had his, biggest game, it's one of the big things that come out because if he truly gets going, we saw it in high school, his sophomore and junior year, if he gets going, he's really hard to stop. And, he gave, a secondary loaded with 4 and 5 stars fits on Saturday. So, think what he can do against, the South Carolinas and the Ole Misses who don't have all that talent in the secondary.
No doubt. And, I was listening to Josh Pate earlier as well, and I thought he brought up a good point. This might be the formula going forward is to just give him, to target him 18 times, give him a chance to go make plays. It may not be, as we saw on the play late in the fourth quarter, it may not be a perfect throw, but he's a guy that can go up and make those sorts of catches, make those sorts of contested catches, and maybe bail you out of a throw or two and create a big play. And so I think that is the formula kind of going forward, to get him involved as much as you possibly can, and then come back and get Devon Achane involved as well, and get him going in the running game. Obviously, it was going to be a tough day for him to run, but had some nice runs and created some opportunities for himself too. So, there are some things to build off, especially offensively. And you're right, A&M fans aren't going to see Wigman, but I think coming out of the break, like maybe we thought, but I think Haynes King has some things to build off from this game as well going forward. If he's just got to be able to limit the mistakes, and this was probably going to be another kind of reminder of that one mistake can prove to be really, really costly, because otherwise A&M did everything they needed to do in the turnover department to come out with a win. A&M is going to switch gears this week, obviously heading into a bye week and then coming back against South Carolina. But this is going to be a big recruiting week, and Jimbo Fisher's talked about that. We're gonna look ahead to the bye week and what's coming up for A&M right after a quick break. Welcome back into the Gig 24/7 Sports Podcast. I am Andrew Hattersley, joined by Brian Perroni. Brian, before we touch on the staff heading on the road this week for recruiting, we also went out to some games last week. You were out at Katy Pato and Katy. Down year for Katy Pato so far. What were your impressions from that game, and what were some big takeaways? I know you got to see David Hicks and Damian Sanford again.
Yeah, so Pato is coming off that state championship last year. They won the Class 5A Division I state title, but now they're in Class 6A. The defense is absolutely loaded and does a good job, except they give up big plays way too often, and that was what happened against Katy. They held Seth Davis, a Mississippi State commit, in check most of the night, but he had a 50-yard touchdown run and another long run. Dallas Glass, the same thing, and it ended up being 54-0. This team lost. I will tell you, I was impressed with Hicks. From what I saw, he had a real big tackle for loss on goal line defense where he just, he blew up the guy, did a little celebrating afterwards. He was doubled a lot of the night. Katy was just going wide on sweeps all night, which wasn't really him, even though he was playing end. It was, not his responsibility to get that wide. He was forcing the guy outside. He would get some pressure and it would force the guy to bounce it a little further. And then the guy would end up running for 50 yards, as I said. So, but I was impressed with Hicks. He's, 280 pounds or something, 270, but moves really well. And that's what A&M loves on the defense. They love the big guys that can play end or tackle. I had sort of had him written in as a tackle at the next level, sort of like Shamar Turner. I keep getting the Shamars mixed up in my head, but sort of like Shamar
Jimbo
Turner.
had the Shamars, yeah.
Oh, did he? Yeah. I was like,
on
okay,
the
which is
Shamars.
Turner, which is Stewart? Like, yeah. So Shamar Turner, I sort of had him penciled in as that. Shamar Turner was a former defensive end, but I think Hicks can play at end, especially in A&M's defense. And when A&M gets back to a 4-man front, he can still stay at end. So I like him. Damian Sanford, the 4-star A&M linebacker commit, he didn't do as much. He had 5 assisted tackles, but wasn't quite as active. I don't know if it was just sort of a down game for him because, I've seen film and he's definitely been active. We saw him at camp. He timed really well. So he's definitely got the tools. That wasn't the game for him to show him. But I do. I think David Hicks is really valuable. Now, of course, if you could have him or have, even if he's the number 1 player of the country, if you can have him or have another position, fans would probably choose the other just because A&M is recruited really well on the D-line and it's not the biggest need. But the D-line is sort of where things are won and lost in the SEC, and we saw that on Saturday night, with Fidel Diggs having such a big game, and those other guys, Walter Nolan having the forced fumble. You need good defensive linemen, and so A&M is going to have that and have a rotation that is better than any other team in college football, and he's just going to help add to that. So, yeah, I like to pick up a lot. Not a great year for Pato. Probably they missed the playoffs, which is obviously disappointing coming off a state title. But I like both those guys in the future, especially Hicks.
No doubt. And I had a chance to see Nigel Smith and Anthony Hill. A lot of running in those 2 games as well. Nigel Smith talked about they went against Mesquite Petit, and Mesquite Petit kind of went into as Nigel Smith joked, kind of learned the wing T offense in about 2 weeks. And between the bye week, they were expecting them to spread it around and try to throw it around, and I think they threw it 5 times all game. And same sort of thing as you mentioned, a guy that looks like he might have the chance to kind of play inside and outside. He told me he was up to I think he's 252, he said, but really set the edge well and did a nice job in the running game. Was double teamed quite a bit, but be able to get through and fight through and make some tackles. His effort in the game was tremendous in terms of on some of those plays where you have to kind of run down reverses and some of those misdirection plays. I thought his effort in that game really showed through. And, Melissa ended up kind of taking over. I think it was 45-10 or something like that at the end of the game. And, he didn't play in the 4th quarter, but, really impactful on the defensive line. And then, give a big shout out to Centennial. Ended up pulling off the win over Denton Ryan. They're now 6-0, and I think 3-0 in district play. And Off to a really impressive start. Ran a triple option offense, and again, it wasn't a great kind of night to see pass rushers really flex their muscles. But Anthony Hill did have a sack, had a tackle for a lot. He really tried to take over that game late third, early fourth quarter. Had a pass batted down, had the sack right afterwards. They tried to get him involved offensively. Den Ryan just don't quite have the offensive firepower to be able to click on a consistent basis, and it ended up coming back to cost them. And in a game that Centennial really shortened up and limited the possessions for Denton Ryan, they didn't quite have enough, but continues to really impress as a guy that plays on the edge, plays in the middle as a middle linebacker, and you can see all the ways that A&M is going to be able to use them. Once they get him on campus, he's a guy that's going to be able to come in, and we talk about all the freshmen playing this year, is a guy that's going to be able to come in right away and play. And I don't think A&M will get a chance to see him. Obviously, maybe in practice they'll head out to see him, but they're going to be on a bye this week before a big game against Aledo coming up in 2 weeks. So chance to rest up before that bye week. And Centennial will be playing Aledo this week, which will probably be one of the bigger games in the week.
That's a really good top 3 in district. One of those teams is going to finish third in district, which shows you just how good that is.
And it's probably going to be figured out over these next couple of weeks. And you think about Denton Ryan playing Aledo and in a couple of weeks in Centennial, and coming out of that game, between Denton Ryan and Centennial doesn't take a backseat to anybody, and they really went at Denton Ryan and kind of just won up front, and they're certainly going to be right in the mix until the very end. So, but speaking of the bye week, A&M is going to be able to head out on the road this week. They don't do a ton of road trips during the year. They kind of use this week as an opportunity to kind of hit the road hard. For you, Brian, when they look out at games this Friday and Saturday and Thursday, who are some of the big targets if you had a priority list that you'd want to get out and see on a Friday night?
So I expect Coley to be in South Florida and to go see Hakeem Williams. I would expect the running back Tommy Robinson. How much did Randy Jordan? He was the running back coach under like Fran, maybe Sherman. I don't remember. It's been a while, and I want to say Randy Jordan. I expect Tommy Robinson to be out in California to see Roderick Robinson. Now, maybe stay in town and see, or stay close to town and see Ruben Owens.
That's who I was thinking.
Yeah, possibly. But Roderick Robinson he's headed to Georgia this coming weekend on an official visit. So, maybe try and head off some of that visit by getting out there. Now, technically, they can go out, in the middle of the week too, and you might see that. So maybe he tries to hit both. But really, receiver is such an important thing in this class. So yeah, Coley's the one I would watch closely and see. Hakeem Williams went to. Now he lives in Fort Lauderdale, so it's not far away. But he went to the Miami game this past weekend, despite being committed to FSU. So shows he's at least somewhat still open. And I mean, even after he committed, we said that we expected him to still, remain in communication with A&M, take an official visit. So this will be a chance for A&M to possibly, make some of that happen.
No doubt. And, Florida State's coming off a couple losses the past couple of weeks, so you could see A&M try to kind of work in the mix there and stay in it. Obviously, A&M's lost a couple as well, but try to get him back in later in the year and continue to press there. I think you could certainly see, to your point about James Coley heading out and seeing, Gulliver Prep and seeing Jalen Brown while he's down there as well. Maybe stop in to see Andy Jean as well. There's a lot of kind of Florida guys. He can make the rounds and see a couple of them in one go. So, it's going to be a busy week. There'll probably be a lot of evaluation. I know you mentioned on the board as well that, there'll be some guys that are going to certainly be evaluated this coming week as they kind of get a chance to dive into film as well. So I think it'll be a busy week on the recruiting front, and I think it'll be a busier late October, early November than I know fans have kind of been asking about recruiting and all that. But, when guys are heading out on visits to other programs, A&M will get their chance on the back end of the schedule to really host guys when they host Florida, host host Ole Miss and host LSU. Those are all going to be really, really big recruiting
Yeah, for
weekends.
sure.
So this is kind of that week to start building momentum towards those couple of weeks, and we'll certainly be back. We've got more to touch on later this week about the bye week and kind of looking at the midseason. But be sure to stay tuned to Gig'em 24/7. We'll have you covered with all the latest on the recruiting front, where the staff is, who they're seeing, and all of that. And we'll be back later in the week as well with another video. So be sure to stay tuned to that. As a reminder, as always, hit the subscribe button to get a notification every time a new video drops. If you like us on podcast or listen to us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, be sure to give us a 5-star review there as well, and hit subscribe to get the latest every time a new video drops, a new podcast drops. Otherwise, Brian, we'll be back next week to kind of look ahead to South Carolina as A&M kind of closes out this 3-game stretch. And
Big rivalry. The Bonham Trophy is on the line, Andrew. The Bonham Trophy, A&M's most hated rival is coming up.
Was it Travis Brown? I think they did a story last year on the Bonham Trophy and kind of talked about that. It's a big one.
I don't know who Bonham is. I don't think anybody on either team cares about this trophy, but it's big, man. It's huge.
Might be bye-week content, doing a little story on the history of the Bonham Trophy and where it all came about. So it's big week. And yeah, we'll see what A&M looks like coming out of the break. Going to be an interesting 6 games. You know, they're sitting at 3-3 right now, looking to obviously finish strong and take some momentum into the off season. So until then, enjoy your bye week, everyone, and we'll be back soon.